Hello, my sober lovelies. Before we dive in, I'm really excited to announce my group coaching program for women is live, and you can join now. So excited for this because let's be real here. Quitting drinking isn't just about saying no to the glass of wine or booze. It's about what comes after. All the fear, the boredom, the late night anxiety, and the stories you've been telling yourself for years. And that's where my Rewired Sober group coaching program for women comes in. It's only $247. I'm being totally transparent on the price. It's for 3 months, and you'll learn how to shift your mindset, build habits that actually stick, and question the core beliefs that have been keeping you stuck, and find healthier ways to deal with that loneliness and that now what feeling. The best part is you don't have to do it alone. We'll have live group coaching sessions weekly, and there'll be a bunch of women walking through it with you. It's not another cookie cutter sobriety program for mommy vloggers. It's neuroscience meets real life, and it's designed for women to help you not just stay sober, but actually feel good living sober. You can join anytime, and I'd love to see you on the inside. So start today, get instant access. The link's in the show notes. Welcome to Rewired Sober, the podcast where we unpack what it really takes to rewire your brain after alcohol. Hi, I'm your host, Kate Vitela, a registered nurse, board certified in mental health and addiction, sober since 2018, and a coach who blends neuroscience, lived experience, and real talk to help women break the shame spiral and rebuild their thinking with tools like journaling, humor, and honest conversation. This isn't surface level sobriety. This is where the healing gets deep, grounded, and unapologetically honest. So let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Rewired Sober. So we are recording this on October 27th, hoping that it airs on November 11th, which is Veterans Day. And there is nothing more that we love to talk about in our house except for the trials and tribulations of veterans, first-line workers, me being a veteran nurse and my husband being a military veteran of 20 years. So I thought I would bring into the conversation so much more than just the PTSD that people think of from the movies and the old tropes about the flashbacks and the nightmares. Because PTSD is really what happens when trauma sort of hijacks your brain and your nervous system. And on the daily, as a soldier, when you're going to see things you can't unsee. We talk about this a lot. And as a nurse, the same, except for as a nurse, you're expected to keep showing up every day to human suffering without turning into a complete lunatic. But PTSD and trauma and moral injury, all of this, it's not just the gore and the chaos. It's more about the moral injury and the cognitive dissonance, the institutional betrayal, when your values and orders don't line up, when the institutions that you've served betray you. There's so much more, right? And when you are placed in situations that really tug at your soul. And a lot of us, soldier or nurse or any human, to cope, the way we're taught is to numb it out. So it's no wonder we freaking drink and we try to silence what's screaming inside of us. So let's get into today's topic. I'm going to welcome my husband onto the show. Phillip is, like I said, 20-year veteran in the Army, and he is 3.5 years sober. So welcome to the pod.
Thank you. It's almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years.
I like to say 4 years.
No, I think we joke in our house, like, I've been a registered nurse for close to 25 years. You were in the Army for 20 years. So we can talk a lot about PTSD, like from people who have lived experience and we also work with people now with PTSD, me working in mental health and you working whatever it is that you do when you fake leave the house and really what
No,
do you do?
I work with veterans and active service members as well as Guard and Reserve members, anybody in the military who has been affiliated with the military and their dependents on things such as alcohol and drug abuse. You run a smart recovery program. I work with them, and I like to say anything they could step in, I find the solution for.
Like any pile of shit.
Any pile of shit they could step in, I'm the one who gets them out of it. I work directly with a lot of the commanders of these units. And I also run a group of veterans on Tuesday nights who several of them are experiencing the effects of PTSD. Some of them are veterans all the way back to Vietnam,
Yeah.
as well as veterans from my time period during the quote unquote war on terrorism. And Lady Chris, who is a veteran of the Gulf War era. It's important that I say a lady, Chris, because women have a whole different set
I can't.
of unique issues.
Yes, I'm gonna be speaking
Yes.
at a women's veterans conference on November 1st. I am not a veteran, but I certainly know what it is like to be womaning in traumatic environment, and because I also serve women in healing, I think my perspective on addiction will be valuable. Okay, so I went to pull up statistics on PTSD in veterans. Something like 1 in 3 have PTSD and or alcohol use disorder. But when you go to the National Institute of Health website, it says, because of a lapse in government funding, this information may not be updated and or there may be no one at the agency to respond to you. So I thought I would kick us off by just talking about the fact that talk about moral injury and institutional betrayal. I mean, we are at this very moment in a government shutdown.
Yes, yes.
A and how does that feel after serving the government or the army, the country for a million years? No, this is the type of thing I'm talking about. Soldiers are not getting paid.
Hmm. It's a kick in the gut. Every politician, when they're running, always talks about taking care of their veterans and the families and their soldiers and the families. And that aside, you have over 1 million veterans in the VA system from the last conflict, and also the millions prior to that who depend on these hotlines being answered or these programs being run and staffed on a daily basis. And when they're not available, bad things could happen. So my department, we're considered essential workers, and we are there regardless of we're getting paid or not. We will be back paid, hopefully.
Yeah.
Could have-
We're essential in case
Yeah.
Trump is listening.
So we're there for our brothers and sisters who have given their youth or their years of their life to a country who promised to take care of them when they were done. And one thing I want to point out is PTSD isn't necessarily for a soldier, Marine, or airman who's been exposed to combat. PTSD comes from many different things. Each person's threshold for things is vastly different than the next person. So there are very many levels to this onion.
Yeah, and I thought I would talk about what is actually happening in the brain when we go through trauma and how the brain literally rewires itself for survival. Because, of course, this podcast is called Rewired Sober. So, I'm going there with the neuroplasticity. Good news is we wire our brains for trauma, we can rewire, right? When we're talking about trauma, let's just say we're in a wartime. The amygdala, the part of the brain that is your brain's alarm system, it gets stuck on high alert and it keeps scanning your environment for danger. So even when you're safe at home after your day is over or after you come home from a deployment, that's why I tease you about being hypervigilant, locking the doors 80 million times, being jumpy if there's a noise, waiting for the next helicopter to fly over. I mean, I tease you about that kind of stuff, but really, I can see in real time, like that amygdala on high alert. The other thing that's happening is I'm using my poor husband as a reference here and talking about how I tease him about it.
It's brutal.
So the hippocampus, part of the brain that files all of our memories away. Okay, this is huge. The hippocampus actually shrinks under stress. So instead of it feeling like a memory, it actually feels like things are happening in real time. So when you're kind of reliving that stuff, so a trigger, a sound, a smell, a word, it can actually put you right back in that moment. And that's another thing that's going on that's really difficult to deal with. I know after we have a code situation at the hospital, when I come home and I hear a loud bell or something, I'm likely to jump because just moments earlier, that activated something in me that leaves an imprint, right? And so over time, also the prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain, the CEO, the one that makes all the rational decisions, it goes offline when we're under a traumatic incident or when we're suffering from PTSD. So it's like your prefrontal cortex kind of steps aside, and really your fear centers are front and center, in control, in charge. Nervous system and your neuroscience is important, but what happens to you is inside your body, you're shifting between that rest and digest, fight and flight, and ultimately over time getting stuck in a survival mode. So you're not sleeping, you're having digestive issues, you're struggling with anxiety, not to mention pain and constant tension in your body. And cue alcohol, right? This is just a very small introduction into the science of PTSD. And this is exactly where alcohol fits into the picture is our nervous system is hijacked. Plus, we've been through depressing traumatic events. It's no wonder that so many of us turn to something like booze. It helps us sleep. It gives us temporary relief. Of course, the cruel twist of all of this is that booze hijacks the same exact system as PTSD, as trauma, meaning that it will lower your serotonin levels, disrupt your sleep, spike your cortisol, all the things we talk about, right? And it makes that amygdala even more reactive over time. So it's kind of like your brain is on fire, not to mention the dependence your body goes through. So this sounds and is kind of a shitstorm. I want to really offer some self-compassion here if you're going through this, if you're someone, if you're, a frontline worker, firefighter, nurse, soldier, cop, and you're struggling, there's causes for this and you're not alone, right? So I'm curious if you'll tell the audience what you experienced, I would say during your worst PTSD times, like the times when we really noticed it was bad before you got sober.
Yeah, the effects of PTSD, they never go away. They're still there. Like, there are days as close as last night when I was still thinking about stuff or having a weird dream or whatever. But being sober
Yeah.
100% allows you to get a handle on that and control that.
Yeah. And I remember your night terrors used to be a lot worse than
Yeah.
they are now.
Yeah. So I would have night terrors or I would actually hallucinate almost nightly,
Yeah. Waking
maybe.
up in a cold sweat, screaming, you have the shadow people.
Yeah. The shadow people were a real thing. And that happened almost nightly. Severe anxiety, laying down to go to bed if I wasn't drunk. It was very hard for me to breathe.
Yeah.
I'd get really heavy anxiety for the first few minutes, just laying down with the silence, I think. Just, I guess, was sensory deprivation, I guess, just nothing else going on.
Yeah.
Being alone with myself was
And
very difficult.
I had a really hard time with sleep too, and that was a big part of the reason I drank.
Being exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, I was, like, tired and wired, like,
Mhm.
physically exhausted, but also wired up from all of the events. I worked night shift, and I used to drink to put myself asleep. I didn't have the words to describe what I was
Mm.
doing back then, but I now, of course, I can look at when we first got married in the early days, back in the aughts of,
Phew.
shitstorm, those PTSD symptoms seemed really remarkable. They seemed super obvious to me because I was coming into the marriage having not been used to someone with PTSD.
Mhm.
I wasn't with him during the time he was in the army. So for me, laying down next to someone who bolts upright in the middle of the night, screams, who has a temper, who is hypervigilant,
Yeah, my temper was I didn't have the brain power,
Your prefrontal cortex was
yes,
offline, dude.
to manage stuff, to manage my temper, to understand that things aren't that serious or whatever. And yeah, I would go overboard, man. I would go completely overboard, like I was operating like I was back in the desert.
Yeah,
I would treat you verbally and physically like you were an adversary.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, for
yeah.
sure.
And I think that's I mean, that's kind of a cliche, right? A soldier comes back and that's how he behaves, but geez, I saw that stuff in real time.
Yeah, cliche, but it's real.
It's
It's
real.
not a cliche, and that is the importance of educating soldiers coming home and taking care of them. Somebody once told me, so true. The military will do a great job training you to go to war with muscle memory, repetition. I mean, they will get you in the game. But in years past, and hopefully it's a bit different now, and it is a slightly different to bring you home. They are not in the business of bringing you home. And one of the hard parts of leaving the military is realizing that, okay, we're done with you, man. We're not going to work on you. Work on yourself and figure it out.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same for nursing. And I think that's gonna bring me to I'm gonna skip to a topic that I wanted to really talk about here, and that is the concept of institutional betrayal. And I talk to other nurses about this a lot. And really, where that plays out is the mission feels pointless. You're not provided the tools that you need to do your job. The institution will turn and blame the individual when shit hits the fan because easier to blame the soldier or blame the nurse versus institutional failure. It compounds the PTSD and it tells your nervous system, like, you're not safe anywhere inside this system. And you're going to work every single day in situations where you kind of know that, like you said, they're not going to have your back.
Yeah.
Like the military's not going to take care of you when you get out.
It's not their business. Yeah.
And it's the same nurses face this the same in a lot of ways. We go into short staffing situations, we go into lack of supplies, lack of adequate tools to do our job, unsafe situations, knowing full well that there is a level of institutional betrayal, knowing that if we fuck up, it's on the nurse. It's on the soldier.
Not on the institution.
You're gonna get written up as a soldier or whatever you get.
Assignment for 45 days.
I mean, if someone gives you an order that you don't agree with,
You better be prepared to pay for that.
what do you mean?
If they give you an order, so in the military, traditionally, you're required to not follow unlawful orders. That is open to a lot of interpretation. So if you're going to disobey an order, you better be prepared to take that with you all the way down, ride that all the way down, because not a lot of people are coming to your rescue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Same with nursing,
yeah.
cops, firefighter, well, anybody in an industry that requires you to be 100% in the mission. And these people who do these jobs I mean, you're not doing it unless you're 100% into it.
Yeah.
No one just does it half-ass. What the hard part to realize is when they're done with you, if you step on their toes or when it's time for you to leave, you're gone, man. Next
Yeah.
man up.
Yeah.
You do not matter in the big picture. And that's just the way it's set up. And there's no right or wrong, black or white. It's just set up that way.
Yeah. And at the risk of, gosh, I sounded like hella jaded. I mean, I think putting words to what we're going through has been really helpful for us as a couple. And I'll get into this a little bit more about how we've sort of healed from these types of things. But us coming home and talking about this, putting into words what we're going through, like that's a classic case of institutional betrayal. And of course, you felt nervous, scared, anxious, frustrated. Like I'll show up at a hospital and I'm given an almost impossible assignment, or I'm not given enough nurses and staff to do a job that I feel is unsafe. An old mentor of mine said, the minute that you accept the assignment, it's on you. and the institution will betray you if you fuck it up.
Yeah.
Meaning they're not going to cover for you and say, you know what? It's our fault. We didn't provide enough nurses, soldiers, cops, right?
That's something.
Yeah, you should have said something. It's on you. I start to get a little bit heated. But these types of things you take home with you. It's not just what you experience. When you go home to your partner, I'm doing this to this day, venting about a situation. We didn't have enough staff. It was unsafe. We didn't have enough this, that. We spent money on a parking garage. We spent money on a fucking sculpture in the lobby as a hospital, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if in the military you were worried as much about what you were spending money on, but I'm certain there were times when you fully recognized that it was gonna get put back on your shoulders.
Yeah. One thing that I was thinking about when you're talking, we've said it when you talk about nursing, or when I was in the military, a soldier is what I am. It's who I am. It's not just what I do, it's who I am. A nurse is who you are. That's why you've done it for 25 years. But it's not who we are. I'm Phillip, you're Kate. It's part of who we are. And it's very difficult for people to leave that behind. When I left the military, it was super hard on me. I gave my youth to an organization.
Yeah.
And at the end of that trip, man, I was beat up. I was beat up by the system, beat up by myself. I had a few people, really great people, really helped to walk me out the door. Sure.
Something really, really
Not
important
who we-
about the identity piece
Yeah.
of it. And there's something about work like this, though. These types of jobs blur the line.
Mhm.
It's really hard for me to separate the fact that I'm a nurse and, right? And I'm imagining it's the same for a police officer
Yeah.
and a soldier. Like these types of jobs really become embedded in your identity because you're dealing with other people's lives. You're dealing with trauma. You're dealing with life or death. Now, I know that every other profession seeps into your life, like, right, as if you're a teacher or if you're an artist or whatever.
You have a passion for it.
Yes, of course, that weaves into the tapestry of your personality. But I guess as a civil servant, for me as a nurse, it's always felt like a big part of my identity. And it's taken me a long time to learn how to separate, leave it at the door, and focus on my other strengths when I get home,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Identity part. It is a big part of you. It's a part is the key word
Yeah,
of
yeah,
you. If I wasn't sober, it'd be much more difficult to separate the two. And I've been out of the military for a couple of days, quite a
yeah,
while. And you still identify with that. I went to go pin wings on our nephew
yeah,
recently. And man, it felt pretty good to be walking around Fort Benning,
yeah.
just kind of, checking it out. But I was able, and I owe it, I think, to my sobriety, to our conversations, to therapy, to walk around proud of what I did, but not feeling the need to be part of what was there that day.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the concept of moral injury. We've kind of gotten into this. So it kind of used to be referred to as PTSD back in like the NOM days. And then around like the 2000s, around the aughts, the term moral injury came into play. And people started to say, use that as a reference versus post traumatic stress. And this is, I think, moral injury closely describes what we've been talking about when you're forced to act against your core values, or when the system betrays you, even and you gave your life to it.
Mm.
You trusted the army, and here you are removed from the army, retired, and quickly realizing that the army doesn't prepare you to and doesn't take care of you. I mean, those types of things. It's not just trauma, right? It's a deep rupture in who you are. And I came home the other day livid. I did a shift at a psychiatric facility. Talk about moral injury. I mean, having to do things that don't feel aligned with what I would do if I had the resources, or would do if I had more staff,
Yeah.
right? Having to act in ways that I didn't like. The cognitive dissonance is all I can think of just like knowing deep down. And you've talked a lot about this with today's soldiers, with our current administration. I don't want to get too political, but the cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
they're facing, having to make decisions maybe that go against their values to follow, nation's leader.
Yeah, it's really troubling. I've had several people come to me and talk about how they're leaving the military 'cause it's not within not what they signed up for is the word. And we're talking everybody from privates to generals to a four-star general who left the Navy last week, 2 years early of retirement.
Because what do you do if you're a service member and you disagree with the current administration?
Yeah.
Not to get you in trouble, but I'm actually curious. Like, as a nurse, I can say
You
nursing judgment and this and that, but
you've been asked to leave. If you don't agree with the current policies, you've been asked in no uncertain terms to turn in your papers to leave.
so talk about identity and having to make that decision and the cognitive dissonance. I mean, imagine what the soldiers are going through having to get involved in, ICE and border patrol stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, again, I don't wanna get too political, but yeah, I wanna get fucking political because we think it's horseshit.
Well, traditionally, and I've always myself, the tradition is you're always apolitical. You don't serve an administration, you serve the Constitution, the people, and the Republic. So those lines are being blurred right now. You're being asked to serve an administration, which goes against how the institution of the military is set up. So, yeah, people are starting to walk away. When they approach me, I encourage them to stick it out because there's no better time than to need good men and women who can say no and who have the moral courage to say no when something is wrong. So it's a double edged sword. I feel for them. They want to get out of there.
Yeah,
I get it. I understand it.
we're in a
But also
storm.
on the other side of it, you need people there who are going to say, no, we're not doing that. So I don't know how we got political.
We did. Okay. So, how did this is a cliched question, but in your eyes, how did your PTSD or moral injury kinda lead you down a rabbit hole with booze? Because your drinking looked different than mine,
Yeah.
AKA talking to people that weren't there around a fire.
Yeah, it was weird. They weren't there.
I mean, you had some ghosts, right? I didn't really have that.
Yeah. Well, I tried to treat my PTSD. See, when I left the army, the war was basically over.
The
So,
war in Iraq?
yeah, my time in the military, the kind of person they needed at the time, we were gone. We were becoming dinosaurs. So that in itself was kind of difficult. The way I handled myself and my colleagues handled ourselves was a way they didn't roll anymore. And that was difficult. And I drank to make myself tired and make myself numb and just kinda I numbed myself,
Yeah, I
really.
same with me, I love that. I drank to make myself tired and numb because
Yeah.
that's kind of how I felt too, like, it became like a nurse's joke to see like, we became so jaded and so sarcastic and so deconditioned, I mean, it was just I think having been exposed to tough things over and over and over and over, it's like we got sarcastic about scary shit. We cracked jokes, and I'm sure you guys did too, like,
And that's how people deal with
survive
problems
it.
with and you do find ways to drink or smoke when you're overseas. Everything's there, whatever. At some point, they actually offered to medicate us during a deployment
Yeah, what was that with narcs?
with, Prozac.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go. That's
By us, I
that.
mean me and some other people, but, it gets silly. So they started to recognize the amount of time that they had us deployed is really starting to weigh on us mentally. You're asked to do things that now, as a man in his 50s, early 50s, you look back at things and you're like, "Oh, what was I doing?" So now, if I was not sober, I would be having a really hard time right now because now we're at that stage in our life where we look back and we're able to look at what we've done from a different point of view.
Yeah.
And it'd be very difficult to not be sober. And I do have a lot of colleagues that aren't sober who are going through it.
Yeah,
Struggling.
So I want to talk about how we individually healed, sort of our individual recovery and rewiring, because it looks different for both
It
of us.
does look different.
And because for me, I was, a daily drinker. I was a go to work every day as a nurse, come home and drink every day as a nurse. Whereas your drinking was more clumped together, right? Because you were on long deployments, and it's funny because it mirrored that even when you came home.
A big binge drinker
You didn't drink every day, but you binge drank.
until I did drink every day.
Well, I drank every day. So for me, realizing that I needed help, connection was, of course, one of my biggest tools. And it was, you know, in person meetings pre pandemic and then post pandemic, going to meetings every single day, talking to other nurses in recovery, talking to other women in recovery about,
Support.
because women understand moral injury, for God's sake. I mean, it's the human condition. We
Yeah.
understand having to go against things we don't really feel are aligned with our soul. And I feel like I wanted you to talk about the Mankind Project, and that being a connection that it was sort of something you didn't see coming.
So the Mankind Project, yes, I kind of fell into that by accident. It seems like most of the good things that have happened to me in my adult life have been by accident. And it's a group of men who come together and support each other, right? So you're supporting men in a brotherhood to deal with past traumas, to deal with issues moving forward. So what was helpful to me about it is just surrounding myself by,
It's just connection,
yeah,
right?
it's connection, by surrounding myself by other men. And the strange thing about there, the good thing about that is that when I left the military, I did not make friends. I still don't
Yeah.
really make friends,
Yeah, I kind of
but,
noticed that.
it is difficult
For you to make
as an
friends.
adult
Yes.
in general. Adults don't typically make deep connections.
And
I
veterans don't make
No,
friends at all.
no, I know a
It's
lot of
creepy.
people, but I only have a couple of friends,
Yeah.
and to trust, another human as a close friend. My friends are, I count them on one hand, before that,
Yeah.
and they were veterans, and if you weren't a deployed veteran from my time period, I had nothing to say to you, not in a
Yeah, you're not
weird
gonna get
way.
small talk about bullshit.
No, I'm not gonna relate to you. So
Yeah.
if you were a veteran from my era, man, we were gonna connect almost right away, like a lot of
Yeah.
veterans do. You're best friends right away. So I was pretty set on not meeting friends. And one thing I did open up to the group at the Mankind Project was that exactly. I told them, I was very transparent and said that I was not into making new friends. I was not into being open with other people. And I had met a whole nother group of gentlemen who I consider close friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put a link to the Mankind Project in the
Yeah.
show notes
It's
'cause
a very, very powerful connection.
yeah. So moving on to other modalities, connection, and then I am big on including the body in healing, and when I talk to women about recovery, it's like, "Just move your body. Just walk." Right? But I know you had your own weird ways of wearing a backpack and hiking around
Called rucking.
and
Rucking. So, yeah, so for me, I will go on long walks with a 60-pound backpack, and it allows me to meditate and kinda get into my own head and be comfortable with myself and think about everything under the moon.
Yeah.
And I need that time. When I don't get that time, I go wacky, go wackadoodle.
Well, yeah, the movement of your body really helps, and you're able to process things. You seem more grounded, more calm,
I do.
and it's something that you've kind of just done regularly on your own, albeit weird that you're wearing a backpack down the highway that has a bunch of my dumbbells in it, but it's movement, and it really helps you, and I encourage women to just get off your ass and move your body. Like, I don't care what you're doing.
It is. As a veteran, or I think anybody with PTSD, we're very injured, right? I'm injured from head to toe. I just
Yeah.
had a surgery a few weeks ago, again, for the umpteenth time since you know me. You were lucky enough to meet me at the end of my career when I was
Yeah,
top of
yeah.
my game.
Yeah, yeah. When you marry a veteran, what you get is a lot of, surgical recoveries. I mean, people think there's, like, a lot of money involved, but really it's like, post anesthesia care.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
So these things,
PTSD, though, you're on surgery number, like, 10
yeah,
since we've been married.
yeah, it's rough. It's rough physically and mentally. And if I was not sober, I could not do these, or I couldn't recover as quickly as I do. I've recovered very quickly from this last surgery, and mentally, I don't think I'd be able to handle it.
Yeah. Being sober, better sleep, able to regulate your nervous system, able to calmly react sometimes to the situation, right? To have the insight to move your body, to connect with others, to think things through. You're a better father, a better employee. You're able to relate to others in your field. Same with me. I just worked 4 12-hour shifts in a row as a 46-year-old woman, and I'm kicking ass. Like, I have lots of energy. I would never be able to do that if I were a drinker.
We could count on each other.
Like, yes, and I love that we've been able to reframe the whole identity around it. Like, we both have PTSD, moral injury, all the shit, right? But we don't go around saying that we're broken. We understand we can reframe and say we were put in some impossible situations. We were put in some shitty situation, but like some of the stories that we tell each other about our lives, our past lives in our career, no human should see the things we've seen.
No, or our lives together. PTSD. PTSD.
Marriage,
Early marriage.
addiction.
Yeah. We were explosion. We're gonna burn this fucker
We
down.
were horrible.
We
at the
were
beginning.
trying to burn it down. I
Yeah.
think we were actually gonna burn
But
it
that's
down.
what happens. Two broken people with PTSD get married and they're in active addiction. There's alchemy there, but it's not the good kind.
No, I think there's a lot of trauma from that, and we got through it. We got through it. We're on the other end of it, and you continue developing, right? You
Yeah.
continue growing and continue just moving forward.
Yeah.
So
Sobriety is like number one on the toolkit, though, as to the things that have
Yeah.
helped us to stay healthy, sane, and married. Hashtag like still in it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
nobody thought we were going to make it as a couple.
Oh man, that would have bet against us. I mean, honestly, if we were a TV show,
We would not be-
you guys would watch it.
we would know. We would. Oh God,
You guys,
that's right. If it bleeds, it leads.
yeah, it would be a great show. It would be a great book, great show, great whatever.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on to talk about these things. I think with the healing of our mental health and our recovery, we have become probably the strongest couple that I know,
Mhm.
the most resilient, with the best sense of humor. And believe it or not, folks, we're actually the couple that other people go to for advice.
Crazy. That's so insane. People come to us for our advice, and I was talking about that yesterday. Like, wow, that's weird. And for someone to say, "Man, when you say stuff, it really impacts me," and I'm like, "Wow, gotta keep a straight face."
So thanks for coming on. I'm happy we were able to celebrate this Veterans Day with you guys. But, in terms of women, just to close this out, you don't need a pair of combat boots or a pair of scrubs to know what this stuff feels like. Institutional betrayal and moral injury. And, for women in particular, and especially in this time, there is impossible double standards. And there's always been pressures for women and wifing and momming to be perfect. And there's been a lot of silence around the pain. And so I created the Rewired Sober program to help women rewire, not just from old trauma, old pain, not just their habits, but working toward all the beliefs that kept them feeling ashamed or small or stuck. But thanks for hanging out with us today. I hope something resonated. Reach out to either one of us if you're struggling, and check the links in the show notes for any resources. So have a good one. Thanks for tuning in to Rewired Sober. You can find me on my Instagram at Rewired Sober, where there are links to catch up with me and all the things I'm working on in my coaching business, or the link tree to my business directly will be in the show notes. I so appreciate you joining me on this journey, and I welcome any feedback or any topics you want to hear about, things that you're struggling with or interested in. I love you all so very much, and I'm just so enjoying doing this with you.